And these are but
Is there a mouse around this table somewhere?
Real mouse?
Oh, it's a real mouse, but it's also one that's electronic. I got home and I where's the last time I used it? No idea. So maybe somebody turned it in. Yeah. Keep an eye out for it. Thank you.
I work at, I'm one of the web developers at Vancouver College. Oh, okay. Cool. We'll bring you up here to hear about that. And we're switching, we're in the process right now. We're switching over to PHP from Fusion. And so that's kind of my big initiative right now. So I had help from that's relevant. I should go. I know. And if I can get work to pay for it, if it's things I didn't have to go in, if I didn't think, then I learned to use something. Yeah. Yeah. So you have like a well, I could argue that web architect, the web developer they have retired. When we first architect guy they hired didn't have much efficiency, and so got rid of him and got a guy more efficiency. The dude's kind of felt like that he takes care of small front-end management kind of things. And we have another guy who's contracted more specific thing. That's one of those we have no idea. Like, it's going on. I'm talking about end of this month, and we have no idea what's happening.
Very energetic people. Firmly.
There's a tiny piece I do. We have a system called Banner that manages students that works got all that information. And then learning management. My part is more managing our main website content management. And then we have a few customer house applications from back in the day. Yeah. But yeah, and then we got the fun figuring out.
Now try it.
Want me to try it again?
See if yours works.
Hang on. Speaker, that's interesting. My microphone was off until just that moment. When I unmuted, that's the sound it made. For the sake of all of y'all, I'm not.
Maybe move away from the Can you hear me? You can hear me. So
Okay, wait. Brace yourself. You're going to try again. Okay. How about I use that mic? Doesn't that sound like a great idea? I really want to do that. I use that microphone.
hello. Okay. We'll start from here. Can you hear me from here? Can you hear me over the microphone from standing here? Okay. So you're good. That's excellent. Okay. Okay, so welcome back to our Saturday here at Cascadia PHP. So speaking of, I have my children here this morning. They'll actually are going over to OMSI. I would suggest that if you guys are staying a little extra, the Oregon Museum of Science Industry is just 2 back stops away, and it's a great place to visit. Also, OMSI, not OSMI, which I will be saying often this weekend. I've already done the slip up a couple of times yesterday, so we'll be there. And since my children are here, my daughter Riala made you hats if you would like. They're sitting on the back table, and they were all special for you. So if anyone here would like a hat, Riala would like you to know you may have one. Craig is modeling them for us. So thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. I hope you had a great time yesterday. We have our sponsors in the back that I hope that you got a chance to meet yesterday. We have MySQL in the back now today, so make sure you go by and say hello. We have Concrete 5 on the far end. They've been a great support of the community. The Portland Labs is a company that supports them, and they are a really great support of Portland, hence Portland Labs. We're really excited to have them on board. They're a great support of our user group. We are also going to be doing our user group on Monday instead of Tuesday this month, so that we can have one of our special speakers that is here today for the conference going to present at our user group on Monday. Steve is going to be presenting on technical debt. So come to our user group and bring some friends who may not have been able to make it to the conference for whatever reason. So our user group will be at 6:30 at Gray Box. You can find us on Meetup or on Calligator. I need to double check that I actually put it on there. All of a sudden I realized I don't know that I did. So usually it's on Calligator and it's on Meetups, and you can find us there. And we'll be at Gray Box, 6:30. There will be pizza. So join us there. Again, sponsored by Concrete 5 there as well. So
go back and check them out and definitely say thank you to them and our sponsors. Osme Help is also one of our sponsors. They were the first ones to come on board, besides Concrete 5, who has been helping the user group from the beginning. And it was really great to have them on board because mental health is so important. If you listen to Samantha, or hear Samantha's talk yesterday, I hope that it impacted you as well. If you want to help with resources, definitely talk to them. They can help direct you to resources that you can give to your boss or your HR department as well to help get that out to more people. And Twilio has been an awesome sponsor. They also did the after party last night. Give them a big hand. Thank you for that, Twilio. And they do have their Twilio Quest. So if you have not yet tried a Twilio Quest, it is a really fun game to learn about their API. They do pretty much everything with voice and SMS you could think of. So go check it out, it's really fun. And they have lots of fun prizes to give away as well. And I wanted to just go over the schedule for today really quick. You will see on the board all the important details. If you haven't been on the Wi-Fi yet, PSU guest, get you on, no password. If you haven't joined the Slack, make sure you do that. Probably should have put the user group Slack on there. The PHP community has a user group Slack for all the user groups around the world. We have our own channel for Portland, but you can talk to anyone in the PHP community from all around the world. So it's a really, really nice place to be and really get involved in the community. If you're going to be posting out on social media, please use the hashtag CascadiaPHP18. And we are streaming again today, hopefully, as long as I can get audio working, which we might have to wait till after this keynote to play around with. So, but I will try to stream for those who need a break from being around so many people, or the Nursing Mothers Room, which again is downstairs at Newport. Again, I know it's a little bit confusing. I hope the signs were helpful yesterday. We have a breakout room here, and we have two downstairs. There's the Willamette that's in the front of the hotel on the far left, and then our Crater Lake you can take, go back to the pool, and make a left is our Crater Lake. And I want to mention today, since we have Uncon signed up at the Uncon board, if you really didn't know what other talk to go to and you were interested, I also want to mention those mental health talk this morning, so you might want to check that out. And that, go to the pool, turn to the right for Astoria. So head to the pool, turn to the right. And if you have any other questions, you can find me or somebody at the front desk, or anyone in one of our gray t-shirts with our awesome You Made It to Oregon t-shirt logo on the front. So anybody will be able to help you. So again, thank you for joining us here today, and I hope you have a fabulous day. We've got a big lunch for you planned, and then a nice happy hour party right afterwards for you to grab a drink, a snack, and plan where else you're going to go explore Portland tonight. And our after party tonight is sponsored by Concrete 5. So let's give them another big hand. And now I'd love to introduce you to our speaker, Vicki, and I'm not going to butcher her name. I'm going to let her pronounce her last name for you, since I always do such a horrible job. And Vicki has done so much for the open source community. I would be surprised if at least half of you have not seen her on Twitter, at least in some sort of open source capacity. She does books, she speaks at conferences, she helps open source projects, she volunteers her time all the time to help people. So I'm really excited to have her here talking to us about open source, and I'll let Vicki carry it away.
Hi. We're going to do a little AV jiggery pokery here, so just hang with us. And if somebody wants to get the lights, because things are going to get a little dark otherwise. Hang on. Not quite done. I go over here and I hit it, because I record all my own talks. Alrighty. And make sure I have focus on the right thing. I do. Yay, okay, hi. Wow, it got really hard to see half of you. All right, and pro tip, whenever you speak, your very first speaker note should be start your timer. I always forget. It is now started though. So hi, Cascadia PHP. Thank you so much for having me. I am VM Resor. I don't think Elena would have slaughtered my name, but I do respect that she gave me the chance to say it. So I haven't really programmed full-time in over 10 years. Currently, I help companies sustainably use, release, contribute to, and understand free and open source software and mess with HDMI cables. Well, this is going to be fun. Hang on. Hold, please. Okay, let's try it again. That randomly changes every 5 minutes, and I'm really very grateful that one of the not safe for work ones didn't come up. Okay, let's see how long this will work this time. So I am currently a freelancer helping companies sustainably use, release, contribute to, understand free and open source software. Prior to this, I ran software engineering departments at the director and VP level. I've been in technology for over 20 years, been using free and open source software for more than 30. But way back when, I did actually program for a living. And the language I used most often was Perl. I actually haven't been much of a PHP programmer ever. I have dabbled a bit, but it's not something that's really come up in any of the jobs or any of the teams I've led so far to this date. To be honest, I have to confess, being an outsider, most of what I know about PHP, I love these slides, most of what I know about PHP comes from hearing people complain, whine, cry about it a lot. I'm sure you all have heard all of these things over and over again. There is so much judgment out there about PHP. People say things like, well, no self-respecting company would ever use PHP these days. They would use Go, they would use Python. Rust is the new hotness. Everybody wants to use Rust now. These are obviously the only reasonable choices you could use in your company, right? You would never use PHP because PHP is old. PHP is insecure. There is so much finger wagging out there about PHP. And believe me, used to be in the Perl community. I'm familiar with this and I totally sympathize. But there's not a lot of fact finding. People aren't really looking at the truth about PHP. Now, like I said, I have been around for a long time and I have been in the Perl community. So a lot of the things that I was hearing were very familiar. They were the same sort of uninformed bigotry that I see all the time on the net. So rather than listening to them, I went out and I did my own research and I found some facts. And what I found was actually really staggering. Did you know that 83.5% of websites use PHP in some form? This is by w3text.com. They have a lot of very interesting research on their website, but 83.5%. Most people don't realize that. WordPress alone is 53% of the top 1 million websites. If you add in Joomla, and if you add in Drupal, this makes 3 very, very large projects, CMS, content management systems. They're all written in PHP. You add in those two, you get 61% of the top 1 million websites rely on PHP. Consistently, if you look at every single language ranking out there, everyone that is respectable anyway, not just Bob's language ranking, consistently PHP is in the top languages. No language ranking has it lower than 7. And several of them have it as high as 4. Now, in a world that has C, C++, Python, and JavaScript, for PHP to be at 4 pretty consistently, that is very impressive. And it just goes to continue to show that people are bigoted and are not really paying attention to how important and how big PHP is. So while there is always plenty of room in the world for more free and open source software languages and more programming languages, there's no denying that PHP is really important. It has built the internet. The web as we knew it back in the old days, the web as we know it today, and the web as we will know it tomorrow, it all owes its future to PHP, and it owes its existence to people like you who program in PHP. PHP has helped so many people over its short 23 years of existence so far. And PHP programmers have played a massive role in that. Thanks to you, billions of people have made connections. They've shared their knowledge. They've started businesses and they've changed their lives. Thanks to you and PHP. PHP has helped so many people. But you, each and every one of you here, you can help PHP. And that's because the language itself is open source. WordPress, Drupal, Joomla, all the plugins, all of the frameworks that you're using, almost every single one is free and open source software. Now, what does that mean? You probably think you have a pretty good idea already, but I find it's best to make sure we're all on the same page with this sort of stuff. Plus, I've also found that people they think they know what open source is, but they don't have a complete picture. So indulge me as I go into a bit more detail. This is the definition of open source according to Wikipedia. For the recording, open source software is a type of computer software whose source code is released under a license in which copyright holders grant users the rights to study, change, and distribute the software to anyone for any purpose. Okay, that's fine as elevator pitches go. It's really dry. It's not very interesting. But did you know that this is not actually the definition of open source? There is a worldwide accepted and very, very specific definition of what it means to be open source. Now, I'll get to that definition in a moment, but first, let's do a little history. 32 years ago, Richard Stallman published these, the 4 freedoms. These are the fundamental tenets of free software. Now, these freedoms are very important. They are the foundation of all of free and open source software. But these 4 freedoms, these are not actually the most important contribution that Stallman has made to the world. Stallman's most important contribution was licensing, because he realized that he could use existing copyright mechanisms to create software licenses that will ensure his 4 freedoms for anyone who encounters software that uses one of those licenses. This revelation helped to make the free software movement from just rhetoric into reality. And without it, free and open source software as we know it would not exist today. In 1998, just a few months after Netscape announced it was going to release the Navigator source code under a free software license. How many of you were around for that? Right, that was a really big deal. So a few months after that, in 98, some people gathered in Palo Alto, California. And it was at that meeting 20 years ago, happy birthday open source, by the way, 20 years old this year, at that meeting that the term open source software came into being. It didn't exist before that. It happened at that meeting. It was coined by a woman named Christine Peterson. It was also the place where the open source initiative was formed and the seeds were planted for this, the open source definition. The open source definition, or OSD, this is built upon the 4 freedoms that Richard Stallman gave us, but it's also built upon the Debian free software guidelines. And the OSD here, it details what is required of any software that calls itself open source. It must provide free distribution, must give you the source code, especially if you ask for it, if it's not provided up front. You have to allow for derived works of the software. This is required. You must maintain the integrity of the author's code. Don't go removing their name from their code. You cannot in any way discriminate against people, against groups, against fields of endeavor. You can't say certain people can't use my software. because open source software is entirely non-discriminatory by definition. You must always distribute the license so the people who are using the software know what their rights are, because without that license, you just don't know. That license can't be specific to a product. It can't restrict the other software that you can use with it, and say, for instance, you can never use my free software product on a Windows system. You can't do that. It's against the open source definition. And that license must be technology neutral. You can't say that you can use this on mobile, but you can't use it on, for instance, your laptop. This is what open source promises to the world. This is the worldwide canonical definition of open source software. Software that does not provide for each and every one of these 10 items is literally, by definition, not open source. And this is something that I find a lot of people aren't really familiar with, this definition of open source software. To help ensure the freedoms of the open source definition, the OSI, Open Source Initiative, it reviews software licenses and it compares them to that definition. And it looks at the licenses and it says, hey, do they hit each and every one of these 10 points? Does this license ensure the freedoms and rights of the open source definition? If it does, then the OSI approves it and it becomes an OSI approved license. Only OSI approved licenses are those that are guaranteed to provide those rights. So therefore, only projects using an OSI approved license are guaranteed to be open source, because you know for sure that they will match that definition. Good, I hadn't looked. If my slides go away, someone like jump up and down and wave or something, because I can't see over there. So projects that are using non-approved licenses, those that are not approved by the OSI, they are at best source available. You can access the source code, but you don't necessarily have the right to do what you want with that source code, because it's not an OSI approved license. That ensures that you have that right. And at worst, projects using non-approved licenses, they might be open only in name and then restrict what people may do with the software. These are faux open projects, or as we like to call them, open source. Finally, there's a lot of software out there now that has no license at all. Without a license, that software is all rights reserved to the authors of that software. This means that using software without a license, it means you're violating copyright law. It can get you or your company into a massive amount of trouble. Copyright things and intellectual property law is not something you want to mess with. So why does this matter? You're probably all bored by now as I'm going through all of this philosophical sort of legal crap, right? Why does this matter? We don't actually need a definition of open source, do we? We don't all need to use the same sort of meaning for it. I mean, this software is free. This software is open. We can do whatever we want, right? Well, wrong, because then we lose a whole lot of benefits. Shared definitions of things, they make it so much easier for everyone to communicate and for everyone to collaborate. There's no need to spend time on defining terms because that's already handled. You all know what open source software is because you all know what that definition is. You all are working under the same perspective. You can just get together now and get down to business without having to deal with any of that administrivia. We've done that for you. You also end up with shared expectations when you have a shared definition. When you're using software that has these OSI approved licenses, developers and users and companies, they are all ensured that they will always be able to inspect, modify, use, and distribute that software. Imagine how difficult life would be if you wanted to collaborate or you wanted to use licenses or modules, I mean, libraries or modules, but you weren't sure if they were open source. You just weren't guaranteed that. What would you have to do there? Well, you would have to spend a great deal of time reading licenses and trying to understand the legalese to verify that you're able to do what you want with that software. With the current definition, the OSD, the open source definition, with OSI approved licenses, you don't have to do that. And speaking of reading licenses, everything involving a license falls under the umbrella of intellectual property law. Now, there's a reason why there are people who specialize in this stuff, and that's because intellectual property law is hard. It is complex. It is really very easy to screw things up. You don't want to play fast and loose with intellectual property law. But with that pool of OSI-approved software licenses, you don't have to think about this stuff quite as much. Obviously, you should read the licenses all the time. But to oversimplify things, all you really have to do, and all pretty much we do, is we just pick an OSI-approved license, apply it to our project, and move on. And then everyone will know that it's open source. By performing that license review and looking at these licenses and ensuring that they adhere to the open source definition, the open source initiative, it spares all of you open source maintainers and users, spares you the burden of having to hire your own lawyers. We've done it for you already. You don't have to hire a lawyer to create a license or to make sure that the license on the software you're using is even legal, because we've done that for you. And PHP has benefited so greatly from all of this. By being a part of free and open source software, it gets all of these benefits, everything under the open source definition. Many of the projects and the modules written in PHP, they're also released under these OSI-approved licenses, and so they're also similarly benefiting. And because of this, the PHP world, as we just saw in all of those amazing numbers, they blew me away, I had no idea. But because all of these things are open source, the PHP world is vibrant, and it's growing, and it's wonderful and beautiful. And thanks to all the people who have been able to contribute to PHP and its ecosystem, because it is free and open source software. And you can be one of those people. If you've already started contributing to a project in this vibrant, wonderful world of PHP, thank you. You yourself, you are helping to keep that PHP world growing and evolving and thriving, and thank you so much for that. But if you haven't started contributing yet, you can start at any time. Your first step will be to find a project to contribute to. Now, I do a lot of this, and I have thought about new contributor stuff probably rather more than anyone else in this room. And what I found is that a lot of new contributors find that locating a project to contribute to, it's a lot harder than they expect. And part of the reason for that is that there are millions of projects out there. That's not hyperbole, that's fact. In the 2017 State of the Octaverse study, the State of the Octaverse, a really interesting study released by GitHub every year, it showed 25 million active repositories for that year alone, just in 2017. Now, for the sake of argument, assume that half of those are private repositories, because they do a pretty bad job in the study of telling you what an active repository is. So we're just going to assume, for the sake of argument, that half of them are private repositories, and then you don't have to worry about those because you can't get to them. So let's assume another half of the remaining ones are clones of a project. So it's just a copy, you don't have to worry about it. So ignore those. Now, of the remaining bit, let's assume half of them don't have a license at all, and therefore it's dangerous for you to use or contribute to them. So we can ignore them too. Now, what this leaves us with is that that's over 3 million on GitHub alone. 3 million projects just in 2017 on GitHub alone, and that's not even counting GitLab. That's not counting. That's not counting our friends in MySQL. That's not counting Bitbucket. It's not counting so many things. That's just GitHub. So there are literally millions and millions of them out there. And how do you pick out of millions? You just get totally deer in headlights. It's okay. You can do this. There are 3 main areas you should keep in mind when looking to contribute to a free and open source software project. Number 1, copy. So 3 things to keep in mind: your goals, your constraints, your interests. Now, something that I find very few people ask, and even fewer answer, is why you want to contribute anyway. And that's a shame, because the answer to that can make a massive difference on whether you're successful in contributing to free and open source software. It's okay to get something for yourself out of the contribution process. It doesn't have to be purely altruistic. If you want to do it for altruistic reasons, that's awesome too, but it doesn't have to be. So what do you want to get out of this process? Do you want to get networking? Do you want to meet new people by contributing? How about learning new skills to move you forward in your career? Do you want to go become a senior developer? Do you want to become an interaction designer? Do you want to become InfoSec engineer? These are things that if you know in advance, you can use those goals to help you pick the right project for you that can move you towards where you want to go in your career. And of course, there's nothing wrong with having a goal of the warm fuzzies that come from knowing that you're helping others in the PHP community. There's a lot to be said for that. What are your constraints? Another way to phrase this is, what are the requirements for that you yourself particularly need in a project? For instance, do you need a project that provides a lot of documentation and contributor support? Or are you okay with going it alone? That's a valuable question to ask yourself. Do you only have a couple hours a week to contribute? Because otherwise, you won't have enough time to spend with your kids, or you won't have enough time to attend classes, but you do want to contribute. Knowing that you have limited time can really help you zero in on the right sort of project for you. Do you need a project where the primary language is not English? There's a lot of them out there now. And so knowing that in advance and knowing that you yourself would be more successful if you were contributing to a project that's written in Spanish, for instance, that's good to know. Considering where we are right now, all of us here together, could be that you require that the project be written in PHP. Awesome, yay. Or maybe you want to add a new programming language to your collection. Knowing these things in advance can help you to winnow down those millions to the projects that are really a good fit for you. But really, you're more likely to be successful with your contribution if it's something that interests you. This should go without saying, but all too often I see new contributors just jump at the very first project that somebody suggests to them. Oh, you should definitely be, they all come to me saying, hey, I want to contribute to the Linux kernel. That's nice. Maybe not the best fit for everyone, but that's the sort of thing that I see a lot. They might not care about the Linux kernel, but they've heard about it, and so they want to contribute to it. But looking at your interests, the thing that's actually going to keep you engaged, right? That's going to be really important, because otherwise you're not likely to really see these things through. So what sort of things will keep your interest? How about tasks or contribution types? Do you want to focus on design? Do you want to focus on programming? Do you want to focus on community management? Do you want to focus on security audits? If those sorts of things really get you jazzed, then look for those in your projects. But how about topics? Maybe you'll stay more engaged if you're working on something that's related to one of your hobbies. Did you know there are projects out there about tweaking the performance of the engine of your car? There are projects out there for knitting, for music, for woodworking. There are so many projects out there. There's something out there for everyone. And so you don't have to work on this massive, big name sort of project that everybody has heard of. You can work on something small and meaningful to you. And that's really great. Knowing the answers to each of these things is really going to help a lot for limiting down the number of projects. So you can look at just the ones that are a best fit for you. And that will help maximize your success. But remember that these are your goals. These are your constraints and your interests. And only you can define these. So be true to yourself, be honest with yourself, and you're much more likely to be successful in your free and open source software contribution. So now that you've got your goals, your constraints, your interests, so how do you find a project to match them? Well, like I said, there are millions of these little buggers running around out there. So how are you going to pick them? Well, thankfully, because there are millions, they're not too hard to find. Obvious answer, go to the web, search for them. Use your constraints, use your interests as keywords in a search and see what comes up. PHP open source woodworking actually does return results if you're into that sort of thing. So check it out. That's a good way to find some interesting projects. The easiest way to do it, though, is looking at the stuff you already use every single day, either for work or for your own project. This gives you a quick and an easy short list of things to just start looking at. But also asking the people you know. If you're a member of a PHP user group, such as the one that's meeting Monday, check Cascadia, asking those people about their experiences with free and open source software projects. It's a great way to find projects that you might want to contribute to. But you know what it's also great for? Finding projects you don't want to contribute to. Because their firsthand experience is really valuable for you. There's something that you might want to avoid. And then you're here. Hello, Cascadia PHP. Right? If you're here at this conference and you want to contribute, approach some of the great presenters who have been here yesterday and today. As they mention projects, if there's something you're interested in, walk up to them and say, hey, that's really interesting. How can I help? I mean, this is a short list of projects that are mentioned here this weekend. Magento and Symfony and Concrete 5, shout out to our sponsor, Concrete 5 and Composer and Homestead. There are so many amazing projects that are talked about here at this very conference. Concrete 5 has an entire session at 4 o'clock that's all about, just using Concrete 5 and contributing to it. And you can speak with the core developers themselves. That's something I think is really great and that a lot more conferences ought to do to make contributing a lot more accessible to people. So meeting contributors at conferences is a really great way to get started, and you already have a personal connection with someone on the project. Never underestimate the power of a personal connection. That can really make it a lot more successful for you to contribute. And then you just pick one. Voila! Just put your hand in the hat and pull one out. Well, the thing is, you've been thinking about this for a while now. You've been searching for a project, and once you've been doing all that other work, actually picking one is usually pretty easy, because usually through that process, there's a project or two that just kind of calls out to you in some way. Listen to that call, right? Just run with that. You're like, oh yes, I would love to contribute to that one. Just jump on it and see what happens. If you can't make up your mind at all, or if you can't find a project, it could be that your constraints are way too severe, or that you're just being way too picky. So loosen up a bit and try it. So once you've found your project where you want to contribute, getting started can be as easy as just reading the docs and selecting a bug from their issue tracker. Or, depending on the project, it might take a lot more communication with them to figure out where you want to start and where they want you to start. That's very important. But no matter what, the one thing you should always remember before you start contributing, if you remember one thing, make it this. Please read all of the docs before you get started. Documentation is amazing. Documentation is a gift to free and open source software project maintainers and to contributors alike. Don't ignore the documentation just because you think you know how to contribute, because no two projects handle contributions entirely the same. So don't assume, confirm. And how do you confirm? You RTF them. Read the docs. They took the time to write the docs. Please respect that and take the time to read the docs. It's really not that big of a deal to take a few minutes and read some documentation. But if there are no docs, this is unfortunately all too common. If the project has no documentation, unless you are willing to devote hours of your life trying to tease out information, trying to figure out how things work, then I recommend finding another project completely. This is particularly important if your constraints include time. If you do only have a couple hours a week to contribute to a free and open source software project, do you want to spend those couple hours desperately trying to get your build environment going without any directions whatsoever? No, you don't. You want to be effective. You want to start making a difference. So if they haven't given you the documentation for it, then please consider another project, one that has provided documentation, one that is making it a lot easier for people to contribute. Now, I haven't gotten into a lot of the nitty-gritty details of contributing to free and open source software, and this may already sound like a massive hassle. You haven't even started contributing, and oh my gosh, look at all the work you've had to do. Good grief. So why do this? Why take the time to think about your goals, your constraints, and your interests? Why take the time to find a project? Why take the time to wade through all the documentation? Oh my gosh, all the work you're asking me to do, Vicky. Why contribute at all? Well, your life is probably really busy. Is this worth it? Well, again, this goes back to your goals. You don't know whether it's worth it if you haven't figured out what you want to get out of it. But one of the things you can get out of it is you can help to build the tech that you are using today. You can help make it better. Contributing allows you to have a say in the PHP technology that you use every single day. You can help direct its development. You can help yourself and your company and help the entire PHP community through your contribution. That's valuable. But you don't just build the tech of today, because you can work on the tech of tomorrow. Even if you don't use a certain project now, even if it's brand, shiny, sparkly new and still has that new project smell, right? Even if it's new, you can still work on it. You can build the standard technology of the future for PHP. You can even contribute to the PHP language itself. You can help shape PHP 8, PHP 9, PHP 10. You can influence the development decisions for years to come, and that's really valuable. You get to meet amazing people like the ones sitting here in this room today. Even by contributing to just a single small project, you have the opportunity to get to know people all over the world, and that's really great. These are the people with whom you can collaborate to build some of that great new stuff of the PHP of the future. They're also the people that you can convince to join your team, and that's also really valuable. But most valuable to you personally is those are the people who are going to help you find your next job. When you discover that you just need a change for some reason or other, you can go to your PHP project community and say, hey, I'm on the market. And they go, stick a pin in that, I have something for you. It's so much easier when you know people. And get to know people through contributing. And by contributing, you get to join a community that's 23 years old, and it is more vibrant and more evolving and more important than ever. You can help to shape and grow the technology that powers more than half of the web, people. That's amazing. You can be part of something truly great. Now, if you've not done anything like this before, you're going to be very surprised once you do, because it can feel really good to be a part of a community like this. Just as you need PHP to get your work done every single day, PHP needs you, and you can help, and you can make a difference. Now, this talk is just a quick overview of free and open source software contributions. If you want to learn more about them, about free and open source software projects, and what it's like to contribute to one, there are 2 sessions all about this later today, right after this. We have James and Andrew, and they're going to share a lot of really amazing information for you. And it's going to give you a lot to think about over lunch and a lot to talk about. So do check out their sessions. And if you want another excellent tech conference experience, this is where I get to do my little advertising. Please join us up in Seattle at November 9th and 10th for Seattle GNU Linux Conference. This is our 6th year. We have 4 amazing keynotes. We have 5 tracks of technical talks, including some talks about PHP. It is over 2 days, and it is 100% entirely free to attend. We would love it if you would join us up there. Just hop on the Amtrak and scoot on up. These slides are already available here at Internet Archive. I am your presenter, VM Pursuer. We're all friends here, though, so you can call me Vicky. I am an open source policy and strategy freelancer. I am an author and community moderator for opensource.com. I'm the vice president of the Open Source Initiative and the author of this, the first and only book, all about how to contribute to free and open source software projects, and it's available right now here at this URL. So thank you for being here, and thank you, Cascadia PHP, for having me. We have 10 minutes if anyone wants to ask questions. Otherwise, I think we can just start setting up the room for the next thing. James, did you have a question, dear?
I do have a question.
Do you have a question?
So one of the things that, we have a lot of people in this room who are developers, but a few people I know are not developers. Can you talk a little bit about what contribution looks like for people who aren't writing code?
Oh, what does contribution look like for people who aren't writing code? Oh my God, we need you so much. Documentarians, we need so many docs written, but not just written, but written in a way that makes them very effective. And that's something that not everyone is good at. Free and open source software suffers from a distinct lack of usability and an even larger lack of accessibility. So people who work in those spaces, you are needed so much. InfoSec, gosh, we need y'all. Please come help any free and open source software project and just start doing reviews, fuzz testing, do whatever you need to do to make sure things are more secure. And the way things look for you to contribute are not so much different than they are for the coders, except for the fact that most people won't be used to working with you. So that's something that you will have to kind of coach them through, because they might not know how to interact with an InfoSec specialist, because they might not have one at work, unfortunately. So you get to coach them through that, and that can be really valuable for everyone. So yeah, we need you, whether you're a coder, community manager, event organizer, this sort of stuff doesn't happen just overnight for free. Lots of people put in a lot of time and effort to make this happen for their free and open source software community, for the PHP community of Cascadia. Yes, sir, what's your name?
Cabby.
Hi, Cabby.
As a former open source project admin, I have to add something to that list you just gave him. Support.
Okay, so
every project is desperate for people to help end users.
So I do like to repeat things because they are being recorded. So what Cabby would like us to recognize is that we do also need people to do support. So as those new issues come in, triaging them, asking people, for more information, how to reproduce, that sort of stuff. Most projects need a lot of help with that. And I have an entire section in my book that's all about, here's how you can help triage issues, even if you're not a coder. Because you don't have to be a programmer to triage a lot of issues. You should ask the project first, because some projects don't like you to do it if you're not a core contributor. But you don't have to be one. One more question. Yes, sir. What's your name?
I'm Alan. Nice to meet you, Vic.
Hi, Alan.
It's a tricky question to ask positively, but with a lot of bigger companies now realizing open source is a thing and you almost have to be open source first, if you're looking for a project to contribute to, how can you avoid getting into a situation where it's less about open source and more about doing free work for somebody else who's profiting off of that?
So how can you find a project where you're more likely to be doing something for the community than for a corporation? Is that a good
yeah, I would say that's a good restate.
Well, for one thing, you can start with very small projects. That PHP open source woodworking project, I guarantee you, is not very large. So you can go there and you can look for those. So you can do that. Also look at the contributors for a project. If the contributors are almost entirely from the company that is sponsoring that, let's say if you want to go to Kubernetes, look at all of the people who are working on Kubernetes. How many of them are straight from Google? A lot. Not all. They're doing a lot better at that now. They're putting a lot of work into that to make it more of a community project than a Google project. But looking at, for instance, let's say if you want to contribute to Redis, just pulling a random project out of nowhere. Let's say you want to contribute to Redis. You can look at the contributors of that and see how many of them are from outside of the Redis company. Not many. So maybe that's not one where you want to contribute because you will only be supporting a company rather than a community. So there are ways to do it. That's all we have time for because we do have to do stuff with this room. I will be around, so feel free to find me and ask me questions later. Thank you. It might be here. Is it all done with calls? Okay. All right.
Okay, I'm just gonna remind you, if you're sitting right at this dividing line here, if you could just move, grab your cup of coffee, because remember, there will be coffee. Yeah. So grab a cup of coffee and come back for our next talk as we close off this wall here. Also, there are extra Cascadia PHP shirts if you thought they were as awesome as I did, and if not, just don't tell me.
He's an awesome presenter. And, we don't use training. But I also saw that last year.
I thought it was.
It was pretty good, yeah.
Can I violate this?
Because Liam used it yesterday.
I mean, I can do my best.
But all we found is this one that doesn't reach. What? But there was one like coming down here.
It reached once, once on that side.
So.
Maybe we want to turn this one off as well. Alright.
Try again.
How about now? Yeah, I think that's working.
This should be enough.
Yes.
If I turn it up any louder than that,
These, you're giving energy.
Yeah, lighting.
yeah, that's the one I'm talking about. And it was fine without, because it's really speaker, so that it kept fine.
Yeah, well, it's my recording is slide.
The slides are just more easy to see on.
Oh, I do screen capture. And so I can see that screen.
I'm not sure. I know it's not clear.
When it's ready, let me know. I'll just drop that into the archive. So, yeah, just a screen for you. Yeah, bring me a link whenever you're ready. I know you got my things going on. Okay. Hi.
Hello.
No, just as you said that, I got a notification. Speaking.
There are no private conversations.
Sure, I'm going to write this off and then come back to
Perfect. I love it. I love it.
This is an exercise, right?